Okay, so I wanted Jitu and Tirtha to do the recap. Yeah, Tirtha, if you're ready, you can start.
Yes, sir. We discussed about the perception process.
Yeah. Could you just give us a brief overview of that?
Yeah, the process of perception.
Yes.
There are five, like receiving the stimuli, selecting the stimuli, um, um, interpreting, organizing, and responding. Response.
What's the right order?
Uh, Receiving the stimuli,
Okay, we call that as?
internal stimuli or external stimuli.
No,
You're the
no, no.
first.
How do you receive it? How do you receive stimuli? Through your senses, right?
Yeah, yes, sir. Yes, sir.
So it's called what? So the
Uh,
first stage is sensation. Sensation,
or
selection, organizing.
sensation.
What happened? You were not able to remember?
Then selecting the stimuli can
Correct.
be external or internal factors
Yes.
influencing us, and then interpreting
Okay.
and then organizing the background.
Organizing, we
Organizing.
use, yeah, organizing, and then we have translation or interpretation.
Finally, the response.
Okay. Uh, Jitu, can you hear me? Are you there? Jitu Augustine? Yeah, Jitu. There are two concepts that we discussed when we looked at organizing for perception. Uh, One concept was called the figure ground principle. So, what do you understand by the figure ground principle? Figure ground principle. Yeah, what do you understand by the figure ground principle?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Go on.
I don't remember it
You don't remember. What do you remember so far?
fact is
Hmm,
the
okay.
target, fact is in the situation,
Okay.
and
What are the factors?
factors in the situation are time, work setting, and social setting.
Okay, correct. Okay.
And factors in the target are novelty, motion, sounds, size, background, proximity, and similarity.
All right.
And factors in the
Perceiver.
perceiver are attitudes, motives, interests,
Okay.
experience, and expectations.
Okay. Why is all this three very important? Why do we need to know the factors?
Factors are the most important.
Yeah.
If
How does it help you? Does it help you, or does it kind of really act as an obstacle?
it helps us.
It helps you. It helps you in what? What way does it help you?
We-
You should at least once go through, the concept, because everything is on the LMS. So all of you should go through it before you come to class. Because when I'm asking you questions, you should be able to answer. Because only then, do we know that there is some pattern, and then you're following what's happening in class. Because right away I don't see you, so that's a big obstacle for me. Okay, yeah. Then we'll. What is figure grouping? We had the second. Sorry, it's called perceptual grouping. Any idea? Somebody can give me some insight into that. Tejas, can you help me with perceptual grouping? First principle is called figure ground. If you can explain that, what is figure ground principle? Tejas, can you hear me? Tejas can't hear me. Okay, Akila. Can you hear me? Figure ground principle. Akila Mohan.
Yes, sir.
Yes, Akila, can you tell me the answer? What is the figure ground principle?
I'm not getting it right now.
Okay, in your own words, figure ground principle. We've been doing this for the last 3 classes now, so you should be very familiar with all these concepts. Okay, Teresa, you want to answer? Teresa, because you're giving me some answers in the chat.
Perceptual grouping, or like according to that.
Because these two are very important principles when it comes to organizing what you perceive. So, Teresa, would you want to go ahead and answer? Teresa, Damien, mic is not working. Okay. She says our tendency to group certain stimuli into a pattern we recognize. Okay. That is what is the concept of organizing. But we use two principles. Okay. So, two principles that help us. One is called the figure ground principle, and the other is the
Proximity.
grouping. Yeah. Perceptual grouping. So these two principles help us to organize whatever we have collected and selected, and then based on what we are organizing on the basis of these two principles, we are able to interpret. Okay, anybody figure ground principle? Okay, Sanoj, can you go ahead and answer that?
So the other day, you showed an example of what looks like a cup and two faces. Is
Okay,
that
okay.
what it is?
Okay, any object that is set against a background or contrasting background,
Yes.
that's called the figure ground. So the figure is set against a certain backdrop or a background.
Yes.
So you're always going to see things in context. Okay, so only when we see things in context, what were the others doing and what were you doing? So there is a standout kind of an example. So that's called the figure ground principle. And then, like in all those examples, that's why we were spending time enough to go through all those images, right? So figure ground principle is, it was very contrasting because it was very difficult, especially in that image where you had that, that beautiful setting where this lady was sitting very elegantly, and there was this man who was sitting behind with a necklace in his hand, and the lady had a purple patch, and the man had a certain, attitude about himself and the way he was portraying himself in the picture. So you all of you were trying to interpret, and then the figure ground concept was making it very difficult because there were distorting kind of perceptions that you were getting because your senses were picking up different things, and that's why it was very difficult for you to come to a conclusion. But one thing was very particular was that purple patch under her eye, so that made everybody understand that it's a case of domestic abuse. The woman was beaten up, right? And she goes through it, and then set against a background of status and the family they come from. She does not want to reveal. She's okay with it. She accepts it. Like most Indian women who do that in their own houses. So it's like that. So that's the kind of understanding that we have. So that's the figure ground principle. Perceptual grouping is where we use concepts like similarity, proximity, closure, right? So how do you arrive at certain judgments? Okay. So we look at that. So let's continue with some of the things, because if you don't give me answers, then we are spending enough time only looking at the recap. So I need some feedback to understand that you know the concept well. Only then we can move ahead and we can move into something more technical. Okay, so what I have for today is, how do we make judgments? So we're going into that whole aspect. So that's why getting to know the factors that influence from the perceiver's point of view, factors that influence from the target's point of view, and then factors that influence from the context, the timing or the situation where it's happening is also very important. And then we use the figure ground principle as well as the perceptual grouping. Well, this kind of helps us to get an understanding of how we are organizing all that perceptual data that we are receiving, right? And then we make a certain judgment about it. Okay, so we're going to go further to understand this concept. Okay, are you able to see the screen?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yeah, perfect. So we'll go ahead. Okay, so we have the first theory that's going to come up, which is related to perception. The first theory on perception, it's called the attribution theory. Okay, so how do we generally look at certain situation or our own behavior, and how do we attribute it? Okay, so where do we pinpoint the source of that particular judgment is what the attribution theory talks about. Okay, so our perception and judgment of others is significantly influenced by our assumption of the other person's internal state. Okay, so how do we judge others? It's on the basis of what we think others are going through. It's an assumption that we make about others, what we perceive about others. So when individuals observe behavior, they attempt to determine whether it is internally or externally caused. Okay, so internal causes are under the person's control. So which means your behavior and your perception is very often under your control, right? External causes are not under the person's control. So it's something that's beyond you, something that's happening outside. So internal is everything that's emanating from within you. External is everything that's emanating from outside you. Okay, so attribution theory has three parts to it. Okay, so we generally, when we look at somebody in a situation, then we often are asking these three questions. The first characteristic in the attribution theory is called distinctiveness. What does it mean? It means, does this person show different behavior in different situations? Okay, does this person show different behavior in different situations? That is distinctiveness. Second is consensus. Is the response of this person the same in all the situation? This is called consensus. Does this person behave in the same manner in all situations? Consistency is, does this person respond in the same way over time? So attribution theory looks at three aspects. One is distinctiveness. How different is the behavior? Is the behavior the same, or is it different at different situations? Same in all situations or different in different situations? Consensus. Response is the same as others. Just like the way others are behaving is how the individual is also behaving, right? So in the same situation, just like how everybody responds in the same manner is the same way you also respond. This is called consensus. Consistency is, do you behave in the same manner over a period of time, irrespective of the situation, irrespective of the context, irrespective of the people who are there? You know, I mean, do you behave in the same manner as such? Okay, this is consistency. Okay, let me give you an example. Let's go back to that accident incident that we discussed initially. Okay, so here is an individual who's met with an accident and is fallen on the side of the road. Okay, so we said there are different sets of behavior or different types of behavior that you are able to see. Now, distinctiveness is shows different behavior in different situations. So in all accident situations, do you behave in the same manner or do you behave differently? Like you could become any one of those characters. In some accident spots, you could rush to help the individual, or in some other accident spots, you could just be a mute spectator taking pictures like how the others are doing, right? Or like you could be the third in certain other accident cases. You could just go there, inquire, find something, and just give some suggestions and go away. So you could adopt different behavioral responses in accident situations, irrespective of where it's happening. This is distinctiveness. Do you behave differently in different situations? Consensus is, what do the majority do? In an accident case, what do the majority do? So there are two sets of majority that you can look at, two types of majority. One type of majority that you generally see in an accident scene are people who are rushing to help the victim. The second majority that you will see, the second bigger group that you will see, are the mute spectators who are standing. Okay, the cause of concern for us in recent days is the second majority seems to be increasing, and it seems to be overtaking, or it seems to be becoming larger than the first group, which often used to rush to help. So either you have to be one of these, you have to belong to one of these groups. Just like what the others are doing, are you also doing? This is called consensus. If a majority of them, almost everybody, is rushing to help the victim, you are also doing the same thing. This is consensus. Consistency is, if you have this nature of helping somebody in an accident, or if you have this nature of being very humane, you have this tendency to always help people in trouble, or always help people who have difficulties. So if you've been like that, you are often doing this. Not just in an accident situation, you're doing it in every possible situation where wherever you get an opportunity to help others. So people always know you as a very helpful person, or a person with a good nature, or a person with a good, a good, social support, or a social service bent of mind. Okay, so that's how we understand. That's how we understand, and that's how we make judgments on the basis of attribution theory. Distinctiveness, showing different behavior in different situations. Consensus, behaving just like how the others are behaving in the situation. Consistency is doing the same thing irrespective of time or context. So what does the attribution theory tell you? When individuals observe behavior, they attempt to determine whether it is internally or externally caused, which means you see somebody behaving in a particular manner. The first question that you're asking is, what is making this person behave in this manner? What's making this person behave in this manner? Right? Is it because of an external factor that this person is behaving, or is this person behaving from, from within? I mean, there is no cause for somebody to behave in that manner, but the person is behaving just just out on his own, right? So we always tend to determine what is the cause of this behavior. I mean, very often we do this. When something happens to somebody, we want to find out how did it happen. Like, for example, go back to the accident victim case, right? So you could ask, how did the accident happen? Okay, so there are two reasons that people who were witness to it could give you. One is they could tell that this person was really speeding at a very high speed, was riding his bike at a very high speed, and he was very recklessly riding. Okay, so that is a cause. So you're saying it's not because of anybody else's fault, it is the fault of the individual because he was riding the bike recklessly and was riding the bike at top speed. So internally caused. Externally is, you could have people who will tell you that, yeah, I was just behind this bike and he was riding at a normal speed. It was the lorry driver who came from opposite, or it was the other car that drove, and they did not see, and they, drove very rashly, and there was very little time for this individual to adjust himself. Okay, so it's because of somebody else. So this is externally caused. So when the moment it is internally caused, people, often say he deserves it. When it's externally caused, you want to help the victim, and you want to make sure that whoever is hit is held to task and is brought to justice, and so on. So if you look at the same thing using distinctiveness, consensus, and consistency, distinctiveness will show different behavior in different situations. Now, does this person, behave differently, or does he ride differently in different situations, or is he always reckless? Now, there could be people who could say, I know this. He just lives in my neighborhood. He's always like this, right? So you know, he's always riding recklessly. Or you could have people who tell, no, no, I know this guy, he's a very careful guy. I mean, he's not that kind of a person, and he does not do any of these things, and so on. So you could have two set of individuals giving two sets of, opinions about the individual. But ultimately, when we look at attribution theory, we are looking at whether the person, behaves differently in different situations, right? Consensus. No, response is the same as others to the same situation, just like how everybody is attributing, right? So if others are saying that it's the fault of the other driver, or if others are saying it's the fault of the rider, if you also share the same opinion, say, yeah, I mean, he deserves it because, I mean, he was the one who rode very recklessly, he should have been a lot more careful. So that's consensus, because you are also sharing the opinion of the majority who are passing an opinion over the incident. Consistency is response in the same way over time, right? So which is, this individual has always been reckless, is what you will say. So there is a consistent behavior in the way this person has been behaving. So when we attribute it to different individuals in different situations, we're always looking at whether it is externally caused or whether it is internally caused. So when it is internally caused, we say that it's for the individual to know, to learn, and make some corrections. If it is externally caused, then we make sure that the external factor is corrected somehow. Like, for example, if it's because of a bad road hump, or if it's because of potholes, right? So you could always say that. So there is always an opinion that comes up and that says, this is a very unscientific hump. We actually don't need this, and we keep seeing accidents happen every day. Or there are these numerous potholes and people just very often don't take notice of the pothole, and there are so many accidents, there are so many riders who skid and fall and injure and hurt themselves. So we have to quickly do something to set right it. So it's an external factor. Do you understand? So that's how attribution theory is often judged. So going a little more further, so there are three explanations that you will get. So when individuals observe behavior, they attempt to determine whether it is internally or externally caused. So let's say, for example, another example that we can look at, distinction. Employee is late. An employee is coming late to work. It could be because of internal or it could be because of an external attribution. So when you're asking this employee, why are you late? Or when you're looking at this individual coming, you have a certain perception why he could be late, right? So he could be late because he was partying late night and then he overslept and then he wasn't able to come to the office or report to the office on time. Or there was an accident on the road that he was coming and then there was a traffic pileup. Okay, so this is distinction. So is this individual late all the times? Which means on several occasions he's late. He's always a late comer. I mean, is he branded like a late comer? Or is he late, once in a while? So, right? So you're able to understand two sets of opinion, whether it's internally caused and externally caused. And then if you ask the individual what was the reason, if he says, no, I mean, we had a late night, celebration or a party, and then, I was not able to get up, and that's why I'm late. So he is attributing it to his internal, he's attributing that internally. He says it's because of my fault or it's because of my reason that I was late, right? So very often you will see people telling us that there was a huge traffic pileup and there was a big traffic jam, there was an accident on the road. This is distinction, right? So where you're attributing and say, I did everything right. I left home at the right time, but because of this incident, I was able to, that's why I came late. So consensus is other people using the same route. So when this individual says that, there was a accident on the road and that's why I was tied up. So if he is not the only individual coming late, there were also many others who come late on that day. And everybody, gives the same reason and says, I was stuck up in that particular, huge traffic pileup because it seems there was an accident and that's why we came late. So this is consensus. So it's not you alone who has come late because of the accident and the traffic pileup. Several others who took that route who are coming to your office are also coming late, and that's why. So that's why the cause seems to be, taken up well. So if all of them respond in the same way, then we know that behavior is showing some consensus. So the reason of your external attribution is the same because everybody else is also giving the same reason. Now consistency is she's regularly late 2 to 3 times. So which means a certain kind of an image that people tend to have about you in the organization, saying that you're a perpetual late comer, always late. So irrespective of whether you give a right reason or a wrong reason, if you have built an image, if people brand you or people know you for this reason, right? So it's consistent. So whatever explanation that you're going to give, whether it's going to be an internal or an external, people have already created a certain image or they've already created a certain judgment. So even if it's a very genuine cause, you will have people not accepting it because you've always given that sort of an image because you're constantly late or always late. If she has been late, right? So if she has been late for several months, right, and for several occasions, so you know that it's a perpetual late comer, so there is consistency in that behavior. So that's how we are attributing it. So there is distinction, there is consensus, and there is consistency. So on that basis is how we look at it. So this is diagrammatically put. Okay, so the individual behavior is what you are observation, right? Now the interpretation is the judgment part. So you're looking at three aspects. Every time we look at anybody's behavior, we are always asking three important criteria. We're always looking at it from three different lenses. One is distinctiveness, right? The second is consensus. The third is consistency. Okay, so distinctiveness could be high or it could be low. If the behavior is different in different situations, it is externally caused, right? If the distinction is low, then it is internally caused, which means you tend to behave in the same manner at all times, right? Consensus. Are you behaving in the same manner as others? Just like the way everybody else is behaving in a situation is how you are behaving, then it is external because that's how the situation is asking everybody to behave. But if you're behaving contrary to how others are behaving, then it is because of an internal cause, right? Consistency. Okay, do you behave in the same manner over a period of time? Right? So if you are behaving consistently in all situations, so this is the same way you behave based on that image that you have, you're constantly like this, irrespective of what happens. If you behave in that manner all the time, then that is internal attribution, right? So if your consistency is low, then this is external attribution. So please look at the difference here. If the distinctiveness is high, if consensus is high, and if consistency internally is high. You see this here? This is the difference. So both these are distinctiveness and consensus are high externally, and consistency is high internally. You are behaving in the same manner all the time because that's because of your personality or that's because of the attitude that you have. This is consistency. Right? If the distinctiveness is low, if the consensus is low, and if the consistency is low externally, then this is internal attribution. Okay, so that's how we make judgments about how people behave in a certain manner. Please remember these three important aspects. Attribution theory basically wants to put the source, whether the behavior is internally caused or whether it is externally caused, right? Internal aspects are under the control of the human being, so you can always make some corrections in your attitude and behavior and behave in the same manner like how others are behaving, right? Externally, if it's externally caused and if it is the same way everybody is behaving, if it's an approved kind of a behavior, if everybody is behaving in the same manner and if it's an approved kind of a behavior by society, then it is okay to be behaving externally. So it's very, very important. Like for example, why I say approved kind of a behavior. Just because a majority is behaving in a certain manner does not mean that it is the right behavior. So now, when I gave you that accident scenario, I said there are two majorities. One majority is going and helping the victim. On the other hand, you have another majority that is standing there and taking videos and pictures and wants to send this, want to send this information across through all the WhatsApp groups that they are in. So there's some sort of entertainment, is how they are feeling. They're preoccupied because there's something that's a little out of the routine for them, right? So the cause of concern that I told you in the beginning is that this second group, which happens to be the mute spectator group or the group that is always looking at entertaining themselves using their mobile phones and irrespective of the gravity of the situation or the seriousness of the situation, right? So that group is increasing. So if that group has increased, if those numbers have increased and they are the majority, and if you are also behaving in the same manner, that is not approved behavior, right? So that's not approved behavior because that's contrary to, the normal expectation of human behavior, that you should always be there to help anybody who's in trouble or who's going through that difficulty. Okay, so that's where the attribution part is very, very important. So what are the different shortcuts that we use in judging others? A lot of times, we take just a few nanoseconds and then pass a judgment. And then we say, they are behaving in this manner is only because of this. So the first one is called selective perception. People selectively interpret what they see on the basis of their interests, background, experience, and attitude. Very often we often say that, right? Right? So I know what is right, or what I say is the right thing. So very often people have their own individual views, and very often those individual views and opinions is what they think is right. The way I see the world is the way I think everybody else has to see the world. This is selective perception. Because I see things from my own point of view, my own interest, my own background, my own experience, and my own attitudes. And that doesn't necessarily have to be the view of everybody else. So when I selectively perceive stimuli, right? So from the sensation, I move to the selection. I'm going to select stimuli on the basis of what I think is important or what I consider makes sense for me. This is selective perception. So when I do that selectively, my perception also is very skewed. And then based on my judgment also is very, very skewed. Second is halo, right? Drawing a general impression about an individual on the basis of a single characteristic, right? You're not looking at the whole picture. You're just looking at just one particular aspect and then passing a judgment and saying this person is just like this, or branding an individual overall on the basis of one single characteristic or one single experience, right? So this is halo effect. Third is contrast. The figure ground principle comes in over here. Evaluation of a person's characteristics that are affected by comparisons with other people recently encountered who rank higher or lower on the same characteristics. So based on your comparison, so we make some judgments. So we take this individual as a sample and then we, compare him with others. So we have a certain stereotype. We have a certain image about people in power. We have a certain image about women. We have a certain stereotype about older men. We have certain stereotype about children. So we have stereotypes, which means we have templates on people's behavior almost on everything. So every time somebody behaves in a particular manner, we're going to compare that and say, is this acceptable or is this not acceptable? So that is how we contrast, right? So that's how we contrast. Like, for example, if you have an image that all children will have to be very obedient and polite to elders, so you have this image. But if you come across this individual who's just contrary, who's asking you a lot of questions, who calls you by name and does not listen to what you say, then you brand him a bad boy. This is contrast, right? So without understanding that today's children are a little more open, today's children are a lot more free, right? They're not curbed under any sort of restrictions like how children of the older generation used to be curbed. So there's contrast. You're always trying to see and then pass a judgment on the basis of that. Projection. So attributing one's own characteristics to other people, just like the way I want them to be, projecting and say, you have a certain image and say you want everybody to behave in this particular manner. So this is projection. And then comes stereotyping. So stereotyping, judging someone on the basis of one's perception of the group to which that person belongs to. So there is a certain predetermined stereotype that could be right or that could be wrong that you have about certain people. Could be about people, could be about situations, could be about cities, could be about everything for that matter. You have a stereotype on everything, right? So and you are often looking at people from this perceptions. Like, for example, stereotypes about North Indians. Okay, so let's open up and just have some answers that can come out of it. Okay, so what are the kind of stereotypes that we have about North Indians? If you all can come out and answer.
Sir, they eat only chapatis, sir.
Okay, they eat chapatis, okay. Okay, just like how you say North Indians eat rotis and chapatis all the time, they also have
Whenever I heard North Indians, I think they eat chapati only most of the time.
That's true. So just like the way you have a stereotype saying that they eat only chapatis and rotis all the time, they also have a stereotype saying that you guys only eat rice.
Yes,
South
sir.
Indians eat rice, right? So that's a stereotype. Okay, they are like this. What else?
They don't mingle much with South Indians. They only mingle with their own.
So that's a stereotype saying that North Indians mingle only with their own group and don't mingle with South Indians. Okay.
They don't like South Indian movies much.
They don't like South Indian movies and South Indians don't like North Indian movies. Okay.
For them, every South Indian is.
They like probably dubbed movies. If that's the case. Okay. And any other important stereotypes?
Vegetarian food.
What's the thing? North Indians are more vegetarian, or how's it?
Yeah, usually when you go up there, it's mainly related to the vegetarian.
Okay, North Indians are more vegetarian. And what about South Indians?
More to the non-veg side.
Okay, stereotype. Okay, then.
So there's also the stereotype that they're loud. They're mostly loud.
Okay, North Indians are loud.
Like
okay.
Grand and loud.
Yeah, very grand, brandish and loud. Okay. Yeah, that's a common one that you generally hear. Okay, what else?
So they are spice lovers.
They are what?
spice lovers. They like the spicy stuff a lot.
Spicy, yeah, okay. North Indians are spice lovers, okay. Okay, any stereotypes about South Indians?
That we eat only rice.
We eat only rice all the time. How is it possible that they eat rice only all the
Only
time?
dosa.
Yeah. And what?
Comes to even to idli and dosa, sir.
Okay, okay. Which is, again, they're always staple with idli and dosa, okay.
So that all South Indian languages sound the same.
Okay, all South Indian languages sound the same.
And also that all South Indians have an accent.
Okay, all South Indians have an accent. All South Indians are the same.
Yeah.
Okay.
Little difficult language.
Okay, very difficult language. South Indians speak very difficult languages. South Indians are usually very submissive.
Yes.
Very
So
submissive.
back when I was working
Yeah.
there, they were like, I had people who I knew from North India, and they were like, they thought that people in South India, they were more nice and listen more to managers and did their work more better with like.
Yeah, they don't
advice.
back answer. They say South
Yeah,
Indians
they
are a
don't
lot
back
more,
answer. Yes.
lot more comfortable to work because they don't back answer. They'll just go about doing their work. Very difficult to deal with North Indians because they're very loud. They question. Right? If you studied in some engineering colleges here in Bangalore, you will see a lot of these kind of things open up very soon, very easily. Right? So that's there. Okay, so that's good. So that's some judgment that we have about stereotypes. Okay, so these are all different things that we have. Okay, I'll show you one very interesting video. I mean, this is a beautiful campaign that was brought out by Okay, are you able to see a video opening up?
It's loading, sir.
Not yet, sir.
Okay, now do you see? Dove, choose beautiful woman.
No, sir. No, sir.
You don't see that? Just a sec, yeah. Okay, now do you see this?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so this is an advertisement that was brought out by Dove. Just to break a stereotype, okay? So just see this advertisement and you'll understand.
It was my choice. And now I will question myself for the next few weeks, maybe months. We had an option of two pathways to walk, and they led to two doorways. It was a bit confronting, actually, to be honest, to see these big signs and feeling like you had to choose and be self-conscious of how you perceive yourself, and perhaps it lines up with how the rest of the world perceives you. I went through the average door. Really? Yeah. Oh my gosh. No. I didn't even hesitate.
漂亮对我的概念来说，就是像明星那种遥不可及的那种。我走的是一般。
Mas eu acho que é mais porque eu me arrependi da escolha, porque era diferente do que eu vivo, né? Diferente do que eu sou. Am I choosing because of what's constantly bombarded at me? What I'm being told that I should accept? Or am I choosing because that's what I really believe?
I walked into that door which said average, and I didn't feel really good after that. Because obviously I had rated myself average, and nobody else.
Todos os dias eu passo pela porta comum e ontem foi um dia único e eu optei por passar pelo bonita.
I wanted to go through the average door, but my mum just pulled me over to the beautiful door. It was quite a triumphant feeling. It was like telling the world, I think I'm beautiful.
I just wish more young women realized it. 要是再给我一次机会走那扇门的话，我觉得我应该会选很美的扇门。I think I would walk through the beautiful door. Acho que a porta bonita está completamente aberta para mim.
Maybe I could walk in that door.
You can.
Next time I look in the mirror, I will see somebody really beautiful looking back at me.
Beautiful is a great word. So why not see what's on the other side of that?
Okay, so that was a campaign that was brought out by Dove to break that stereotype of fairness, and often the kind of sense that people have beauty, associating beauty with fair or being white skinned. So this is just a campaign to create a lot of awareness about inner beauty, that you are born the way you are and you have to accept it. And if you see what happened there, and the kind of thoughts that went into the minds of those women, and then later on when they were asked why did they enter the average door, or why did they enter the beautiful door, I mean, they had their own reasons, and very often it was on how they perceived themselves. So if you perceive yourself very low, or if you perceive yourself very low, that will lead to a low self-esteem. So if you underestimate yourself, or if you don't look at yourself on the brighter side, then no one else in the world is going to look at you like that. So very often their judgments were based on what others perceive. What will people say if I walk through the beautiful door? So they were very conscious of the perception of people outside. So Dow was trying to break that image and myth, and then also send home a message that it's about inner beauty and about the way you live life. That's what is beautiful more than anything else. Okay, so moving further, okay, these are some more images of perception that you could just see. It's there on your. Oh, what do you see here?
2 days, sir.
Okay,
One is through the trees and one is standing there.
Okay, so that's a good one. So what do you see here?
Horses.
Horse.
You see horses. Everybody sees horses. You don't see rocks and some flowing water.
Both together, sir.
See boats together. Okay, so that's perception. So what do you see here?
A lady
With a child.
with a
Okay, you
child.
see a lady with a child. You see
A man.
A dog is lying
A dog is lying down, sir.
a dog is lying down. Okay.
A man.
You see a man. You see an old man.
Yeah, old man.
Yes, an old man with a stick.
Old man is there.
So the old man with a stick. There's also an old man.
Near the eye.
Background.
There's another old.
Face
Another
of
old man who's got this man and woman embedded in him.
Sir, there is a face also on the right corner.
Yeah, there's a face on the right corner. Yeah, the left hand side. To my left.
Yeah.
Yeah, you can see something looking at you, right?
Yes, sir.
There's faces towards the right and the left, sir.
Yeah, you see this. Okay, what do you see here?
liar.
Okay, you see liar.
It's a face.
A face.
A woman.
Face.
Yeah,
There's a woman.
Face.
You don't know whether it's a woman or a man.
Yeah, I don't know whether it's a
No,
woman.
yeah. Okay. What do you see here?
There an old
One person is playing guitar.
Guitar and one more a woman.
Old man. Woman is seeing and
sir,
old man and
on the man's ear side there is one
one girl.
Okay, do you see a chalice?
There was.
Do you see a chalice?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Or a
sir.
vase? Yeah. The perception very often, like, what do you see here? You see some angel face.
Nuns.
Waterfall.
You see nuns.
Waterfall.
People are standing.
People are,
Many people
People
are
in
there.
white cloth.
yeah, many people are there. So it's like that, yeah. What do you see here? How many
There are
faces do
many
you
things.
how many faces do you see here? Can you count and tell me? You see horses, okay, that's the first thing that comes to your
Faces, sir. Five. Five.
Eight.
9
Three
faces.
faces.
Nine.
Many
11
faces.
faces.
many faces is a safe answer.
Eight faces.
Okay, you see many faces. I mean, as you keep, looking at the image a lot more closely, you see that there is a face everywhere now. You can see a face here. Yeah, you can see a face here. You can see a face here. You can see a face here. Here, these are all visible ones. Here, there's a face. See, here, there's a face. Right. So, perception. These are all perceptual images. Okay, what do you see written there?
Lift.
Okay, lift.
I don't see anything.
You don't see anything. Look at that. It's just like some black box.
Lift.
It's lift.
Can't see anything.
Can't see anything.
It's
See?
lift.
Oh, okay, yeah, I can see.
It's lift.
Now you can see. Yeah. Okay. This is a very interesting image as well. You can see a bridge and then you can see ships and they trail through. So this is how it is when you're actually seeing images at a distance. Very often it's very perceptive, illusory kind of images, and as they come closer is where you will get to see what it looks like. So these are very interesting images. You look at these guys are of the same height. I mean, see the kind of illusory understanding that you can see. They're of the same height. What do you see?
3 pillars.
There's a soldier, you see 3 pillars, or you see an entrance.
So the middle pillar is a tricky one.
It's a tricky one, yeah. It's like a pillar or it's like an arch or an entrance. Yeah, very tricky. So it's like that, okay. So what do all these judgments do? Like the way we saw, attribution theory and how is it related to making judgments? So we all make errors and biases based on attributions, okay? So the first error that we often make when it comes to decision making is, it's called the fundamental attribution. So the tendency to underestimate the influence of the external factor and overestimate the influence of the internal factor when making judgments about the behavior of people. So what do? We often blame people and not the situation. This is a very common kind of a judgment that we make. Fundamental attribution. We give very little importance to outside factors and emphasize more importance on the internal factor. So it's often you. That's how we say. You are like this. You're often like this. This is not the first time, right? So it's like that, right? So we don't give a lot of importance. Like when I gave you that example of the traffic pileup, so you will underestimate the traffic pileup, and then you will say, I mean, that Bangalore has a traffic. Anything can happen on the road. Why don't you start about 15-20 minutes early? You should always make it a point that you start early. Why did you leave at the last minute and then come back with some excuse like this? Very, very common attribution, a very common decision-making judgment that you will have many people share that with you. Second is self-serving bias. The tendency for individuals to attribute their own success to internal factors and put the blame of failure on external factors. You see this is called self-serving bias. When everything goes right, you will say, I did it. It's because of me. I did it. I was the one who helped. I stayed up, I stayed awake the whole night. I knew somebody. I just got this done, right time. I did this. Yeah, all this. The moment it is a failure, then you put the blame on everybody else, right? You put the blame on the situation. You put the blame saying that I was given this information very late. I was not told what to do. We were given very little time to do all of that. But if it's success, then you want to take the credit for it. But if it's a failure, you want to put the blame on others. So internal, external. Please understand this: internal attribution, external attribution. Internal when it is success, and external when it is a failure. Selective perception. People selectively interpret what they want to see on the basis of their interest experience. So you are often like that. We are often like that, looking at what we want to see. We don't want to see the whole picture. What I seem to take as a benefit from a particular situation or from a particular incident is what I would like to see, right? So that's how I see. Like, for example, if there's an opportunity that's coming up, if there's a big opportunity in your organization that's coming up, you're always trying to see it from your point of view. You're not looking at it from the other's point of view, right? So for you, the promotion is important. But more than you could have somebody else in your team who's more qualified and experienced, right? So you're not looking at, what is important for the work or the project. You're only looking at, I want that promotion. Whether I do it or not, I just want the promotion at any cost. Selective perception. You're not looking at the larger picture of what's good for the organization and what's good for the project. Halo, drawing a general impression about an individual on the basis of a single characteristic, right? So those are first impressions that we create, right? First impressions are generally created on the basis of that first little information that you're able to pick up. If somebody is sitting at the interview lounge and they have crossed their legs and they sit very majestically, you have this impression. So if you're passing that cell, you'll have this impression, okay, looks like a very arrogant brat. So when that individual walks into the interview room and then you are there as an interviewer, you're having this image that this person is arrogant, right? So you always are looking at that. So whatever that person says, you're always going to be judging through the lens of arrogancy, because that's the kind of perception that you got from that first image that you saw of that person in the morning. Contrast evaluation of a person. So I know people who dress like this are like this, right? So characteristics. So contrasting. Somebody who dresses up like this in contrast to the others is like this. Or somebody who sits like this or whose posture is like this, contrary to others, are like this. Or somebody who carries things with them like this, or somebody who answers things like this in contrast to others are like this. So on the basis of that, we make judgments. So because there's always a comparative template. We always are fixing it up with a majority. You will have parents blaming their children, you're not like the others. Look at the other children, look at your cousins, how they are. Or look at your neighborhood friends, see how they are. So it's often a contrast always with somebody and trying to make comparisons and then pass judgment over anything and anybody and everybody. Right, so judging someone on the basis of one's perception of the group to which that person belongs. So this is called profiling. This is a form of stereotype in which members of a group are singled out for intense scrutiny based on a single, often a very racial trait and so on. So we call this as racial profiling. Okay, racial profiling generally happens to people who belong to a minority, right? So how the blacks are looked at in the US. So there is a racial profiling. How people with color are looked at. That's a racial profiling, right? So people already have a perception about what Kamala Harris is going to do because she's the first colored woman. So that's a stereotype again. So what is she going to do? Or is she going to be favoring? So they may have this opinion that she may be favoring a lot of the Indian settled, Americans. She could be a lot more empathetic. Or probably in India, we could be having a certain perception that since we have somebody from an Indian origin who's the vice president of the United States, so she could be more favorable to India, right? So it may be right or may not be right, but we have this profiling about people who come from certain communities. It could be a religious profiling, it could be a profiling based on any aspect, right? And increasingly people get to be harassed, bullied, and a lot of abuse takes place, right? So all this is called racial profiling, right? So we use all of this in the organization to a very large extent. So perception plays a very, very important role, especially in superior subordinate relationships, and also when authority and responsibility is often delegated. So we want to know it's on the basis of the perception of, or it's on the basis of the leader's perception. Who could be the right person for doing this job, or what's the kind of, will this person be able to take up the responsibility? Right? So it's on the basis of the perception that we have about individuals, and that's also on the basis of the kind of behavior that we have seen of the individuals. So it's very important that if you want to create a very good perception in the eyes of your leaders or your superiors, then you must be able to show some very rightful behavior. Right? So only if there is rightful behavior, if you've always initiated, if you've always taken up extra roles, if you've gone about doing your work very diligently, if you portray that kind of a image, then your supervisors are definitely going to have a very positive and good image, and then you will have many opportunities coming your way. If you haven't done anything to show or tell your superiors or your leaders that you are a person of this caliber, then there is no way that they're going to have an understanding about you. So it's very important. So you cannot sit there and make wrong perceptions about your superiors and leaders. And superiors and leaders also cannot make a wrong perception of subordinates if they haven't, given them opportunities, or if they haven't tried them out to see how they perform. So it's very important there. So when it comes to interviews is where we see perception playing a very, very important role. That's why those impressions and first impressions and those initial, judgments are very, very important. So perceptual bias of raters affect the accuracy of interviewers' judgment of applicants, and it's there. It's like that, right? So that image that I had about this person saying that the way he was sitting, I understood he's a very arrogant person. So I'm going to be judging this person from that point of view. I will not budge down. Even if that candidate is giving me very right answers, is sitting in a posture that is very acceptable and it's okay, but still I will always be looking at it from that arrogance lens, because I always think that I am right. My judgment is right. So it's very difficult for people to let go of their own understanding and their own perception, right? So it's very difficult to repair or to change that image that you already have about something or somebody. Second, we have something called, when it comes to performance expectations, we call this as the Pygmalion effect. It's called the self-fulfilling prophecy. The lower or higher performance of employees reflects preconceived leader expectations about employee capabilities. Right? So I thought of you that you will do like this, but you haven't done like this. So very often you fall short of expectations of your superiors and leaders is because there is a Pygmalion effect. Right? So it's the perception of the leader. I thought you are like this. I thought you would be capable of doing it. But when your expectations, when you do exactly like what is capable of you, but if your leader has had a very wrong perception or has a very higher perception about you, that could be contrary, right? Or sometimes leaders could also have very poorly perceived you. They might thought, you may not be able to do it. But when they see your performance, and then that's when they could also probably correct their judgment and say, I underrated this person, but he's come out really, really well or exceptionally done well in performance, right? So that's there. Performance evaluations, when we do performance appraisals, there is a very high degree of subjectivity. And this subjectivity is often led by perceptions. So everything that we spoke about today is exactly the same thing that we consider, we look into when we do, performance appraisals. So that's why it's very important that performance appraisals are very objectively done. Right? So the moment you bring in subjectivity, you're going to be changing the criteria according to each and every person, and then you're going to fit that with your perception. So it's a very wrong thing to do. But if you're very objective, if the key result areas are well defined, and if it's well explained, and everything is objectively evaluated, appraised and evaluated, then there is very little room for perceptual error. So most of the errors that we see in perception, you will see that happening in performance appraisals and and the kind of decisions that we take or make in the organization. Okay, I'll just take a few minutes. 2-3 minutes. I'll just wind this up. So that's where we use decision making as well. So every problem, every issue, every case that we have in an organization. So it's the perception of that particular case or a problem is what gives rise to a lot of judgments. So very often the decision of whether if we do this, is this going to be right, or perhaps if we do something else, is this going to be the right decision? So very often our estimated decisions are on the basis of how we perceive the situation. Based on that, we have choices, and from those choices, we take up alternatives. From those alternatives is where we choose what's the right solution, and then we implement it. So if it goes right, then we say, yeah, this is what we perceived was right. But if it goes wrong, then we may say, okay, we didn't understand the situation well. We didn't read the ground realities very well, right? So that could probably is how we look at things. Like for example, today the results are out in Bihar, right? So both the parties are going to be looking at, they're going to be doing an analysis. So they're going to be doing an analysis to find out whether the BJP, the NDA did the right thing, or the losing party could possibly, the NGB could possibly look at, where else could we have done well, since it's been a very close kind of a fight. So they could probably think we should have put in a little more effort here, or we should have not raised this issue, or we shouldn't have targeted so and so person. We shouldn't have used this particular theme in the campaign. So they're going to come out with a lot of these things. So all of this is like a post-mortem of something that was based on the perception that led to certain election-related decisions that they actually took. Okay, so we have some of these are decision-making models that we have. So all these decision-making, so which means, what's the relationship between perception and decision? So every decision that we take is on the basis of a perception, okay? Because every decision is going to give you result only in the future, right? So only when the decision has been implemented, and then if it results in certain outcomes which matches the perception that led to you choosing that decision, then everything goes right. Okay, so these are some of the decision making models that we have. This is rational decision making. We have bounded, we have intuition, we have overconfidence, we have anchoring, we have confirmation, we have availability, escalation of commitment, and all of this, right? Okay, so we have all of these. So since it's already there on the LMS, you could go through it. So the next class, when we come back, I'll just touch upon this, and then I'll go into the aspect of attitude. So we'll go into the next topic, which is called attitudes. Okay, since we've overshot time, so you could go through this, and then when we come back, I will just touch upon this in my introduction in the next hour, and then we will go ahead with the next topic. Is that fine?
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, sir.
Yes, sir.
Okay then. Yeah. So thank you very much, and have a nice day.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah. And
Thank
please,
you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
please read this and
sir.
come.
Thank you, sir.
Please read this these topics and then come for the next class, so that we don't spend a lot of time in the beginning. Okay. Yeah. Thank
Okay,
you.
sir.
Yeah. Bye bye.
Okay, sir.